You are now listening to the Cinema Scholar podcast.
Okay, and welcome back to the Cinema Scholar podcast. This week we are talking about the 2020 film from Chloé Zhao, Nomadland. Matthew, what are your first thoughts on this film?
Well, I gotta say, first of all, we have been just overjoyed with the huge response for our first three episodes.
The fans love it, so what can I
Just
say?
a crazy, 76 total views, something like that. I just want to thank everyone for listening, first of all, before we get into this film.
Guys, we'll have sponsors any day, I promise.
We'll just start reading copy of random
Just
companies.
go to Manscaped /Cinema Scholars.
Yeah.
For
I actually didn't apply to them for
50%
Cinema
off.
Scholar, so maybe I can do it on this one.
Send them a package, man. I want my lawnmower 3.0.
Everybody wins. But Nomadland.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
First impressions. All right, Steve. I'm curious, what do you think my first impression is?
I don't think you liked it at all.
At all?
I don't think you liked it at all.
Okay. Well, listen. I'm into some Southwest imagery. I've once upon a time dreamed about just living out of a van. And so I was into it. I think probably all the way through, when she's just doing the van thing and the jobs and everything, I was on board. And then I think I just checked out when she started going to her sister's and then living with Dave. And I just started I don't know, I started drifting. I was doing free FanDuel lineups on my phone. I blacked out and
We're
was
Cinema Scholars, Matt.
I know, but I think it's telling that happened.
Okay, one of my biggest notes, because I think this goes right with it, pacing for me was a huge issue in this film.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there were
absolutely.
some serious pacing problems. It was just kind of drifting in and out. So I guess my impression was, after watching the trailer and then not watching it for a couple months, the full film, because it wasn't out yet, and then finally it came out, I was so excited to watch it because it just seemed like the perfect picture for me.
Mm-hmm.
Picture, what a douche. Perfect movie for me.
Motion picture.
It's a travel film. It's about living in a van. It's the American, traveling around America, the Southwest, all the way up to the Dakotas. To me, I was so excited to watch this, and I wanted to like this movie so much more than I actually did.
Boo. No, I actually agree with that, though.
We should say this is nominated for 6 Academy Awards.
Boo.
Including Best Picture, Best Performance by an Actress, which is Frances McDormand, Best Director, Screenplay, Editing, and Cinematography. So it's
a heavy hitter.
ticking the notches of the Oscars. It is a heavy hitter. And yeah, I'm struggling to understand what it did to deserve all those nominations.
Thank you very much, folks. This has been...
That is it.
No, I actually agree. If there was an award for people playing themselves, though, this is up there, because that's pretty cool. And I think that...
Yeah.
But that's also the problem with it, is it felt a lot more like a documentary to me, in that it didn't have a set narrative, and they did kind of just had Frances McDormand kind of hang out with these people and kind of film it like a documentary. And it's more just a string of moments more than it is one coherent plot.
Yeah, the way, the first word that came to my mind when I was thinking about how I would describe this is that, to me, the movie is fleeting. And by that, I mean, the moment we start to understand the situation or get to know the characters or feel the location that Fern, played by Frances McDormand, that Fern is in, all of a sudden it's gone. All of a sudden we're already on to the next. So I know, in a way, that's part of, the nomadic lifestyle that these people are living is fleeting. So it fits the sort of sentiment of the film, but it doesn't allow me to connect with the characters in the way that I wanted to.
Well, they're no consequences.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
And
oh, she got a flat tire, it gets fixed. Like, there's some conflict here and there, and then it gets resolved, and there's never any, like, underlying kind of, like, tension or through line.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the moments where I thought, okay, maybe this is the turn in the movie that I've been waiting for. Maybe this is, like, the big moment that I've been waiting for. It just doesn't happen. And I think that's because the movie itself is supposed to be, like, cyclical in that we open up at Amazon, her working there, and we end with her working at Amazon.
That's kind of the lifestyle, I suppose.
Yeah. So I guess maybe because we're so used to movies that always have this huge arc, this dramatic character arc, and we just don't find that in Fern. So maybe that's where I struggle with a little bit. But again, I think it's the pacing. I just think we're in and out of moments and locations so fast that you never get to really appreciate them.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what Chloé Zhao was doing and saying that, like, that's the life of a nomad. Like, you're in and out. But ultimately, when you're watching a movie, I need to connect with the character. I need to have some sort of emotional attachment to them to care about what happens to them. And I didn't find that with Fern.
It's crazy, too, because, like, every single character has, like, a traumatic past.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I think it goes to show, like, just because you have, like, a lot of baggage or whatever. And I guess these are real people. I'm assuming those are, like, real stories that they told.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
The production crew went out ahead of them filming and would go and talk to actual nomads living in these areas. And they would just find stories. And then also the book, because this is an adapted screenplay, the book had characters that then they used.
Yeah. I think Fern almost, like, takes a back seat in that, like, I never really got a good sense of her, like, what she kind of wants, like, who she is really. And she's kind of, it's what we talked about with Joker too, in terms of, like, a passive protagonist, where a lot kind of just happens to her, where, like, people come in and offer her jobs or offer help, or, like, the flat tire, and she doesn't really make a lot of decisions. There's not a lot of, like, consequences for her actions. It is very just kind of meandering.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, like, again, I can appreciate the use of non-actors. Sometimes it hurt the film. Sometimes I think it actually helped. In particular, this speech, the monologue that Swankie gave, talking about the moments in life where she thought she could die happy. And then, obviously, the monologue that Bob gave was, I think, by far the most powerful in the film.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting because that's Bob's actual story, and he barely talks about it, and he was willing to share that in a film, which is really cool. So... My problem was that they have these characters that drew me in, that I was actually like, I care about what happens to them, and then they're just gone. They're just out of the film. So they don't... I think the plot is disconnected from the characters, in a sense. If that makes any sense. Like,
and they just show up and come and go, kind of.
Yeah.
Randomly.
And again, like, I'll keep saying this because I know that was part of Chloé Zhao's vision, was like, I want this to feel like you're an actual drifter, to feel like you're a nomad, moving in and out of locations and jobs. But at the end of the day, you have to make a movie that I want to connect with the character, and that just didn't happen because of the way it was made, I think.
Well, it doesn't, like, it's very realistic, and so it doesn't, like, sell the life of a nomad. It kind of just is, you know?
Well, yeah, it's rooted in realism, but I don't know. I appreciate that in this movie because the only thing you hear about nowadays in terms of this lifestyle is fucking van life, and all these millennials and Gen Zers hashtag van life, going out and posting on Instagram only the best pictures, you know, that they get and the happy moments they have. But, like, living in a van and being a nomad, there are some shitty things you have to deal with, and that movie shows it. Literally shitty. I did not need to see Frances McDormand shit in a bucket.
I was waiting until we got to that part, you know? It had to come up eventually.
Spoilers, all the folks.
Not even
shits in a bucket.
Explosive, dude. She got the runs, bro. Usually they show the character eating something bad, and then they do that, but that was just kind of, she's just, like, hanging out. You're like, wait a minute.
So, again, like, I appreciate that aspect of, hey, this is actually, like, some of the shit you have to deal with when you're trying to live in a van and be a nomad. This romanticized van life that everyone dreams of is not the full picture. Like, and this is the other half of it. I like that. I think a lot of people should watch it because of that. Yeah, but again, that doesn't justify
Right.
pacing issues and the lack of character connection for me.
Well, I was trying to think of like comparisons to this film, and like I think Into the Wild just comes up as being like like a solo like trek across America kind of thing. But in that, like what you're saying, he goes into it thinking it's kind of like this dream, like, and then learns that like it's not all that it's cracked up to be. Well, I feel like Fern, I don't know if we don't really see her have any like preconceptions about it or like hesitations. It just kind of is her life.
Yeah, I mean, she briefly describes the life that she lived in the past with her husband in this town of Empire, which then shut down and they had to leave and the husband died. But it's like, yeah, there's obviously the typical struggles of van life, but we don't see her go through any sort of like revelations of this is my life now. It's just sort of like, yep, this is my life, and it's like I've been doing this forever. But she's new to it, which is interesting.
Right, because does she move out in the first scene? That's her moving out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's her moving away from the town of Empire.
Which is like her biggest decision, I guess. And then, I don't know, yeah, she doesn't have any second thoughts. She's not like, I want a house now. Indoor plumbing. Just is what it is.
Yeah.
Did you like Boyhood?
I did.
Because I was trying to think, like, because Boyhood is the same thing in that it doesn't follow, like, a conventional structure. But I'm trying to think, like, why does Boyhood work and this doesn't? And I think first of all, having the time frame, like, doing that whole, I mean, it's kind of a gimmick, but, like, it's cool that they did over, like, 12 years or whatever. I think that helps a lot. In that you're seeing, like, time becomes kind of like your pacing to some degree. Because it is like a collection of moments just spread out.
Yeah, and Chloé Zhao talks about that a little bit. Like, they did real research into, like, what is the life of a full-time nomad like? Usually, which it starts, is they're in the desert for the winter, and they start to move up north as it gets warmer. Ultimately, we see Fern ending up in South Dakota to work a summer job.
Right.
So it's like they're kind of just going with the seasons.
Yep.
But they don't do
like
a great
birds.
job of connecting it. I gotta be honest.
That would be cool if they did it by season or something, like framed.
Yeah.
That would have provided a little more framework, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. It was also, I mean, like Amazon now has become like the modern factory. Kind of. I was thinking about that. It was weird to go from like the like snow-covered Nevada and like the whole like Southwest landscape into like an Amazon, I guess, whatever facility. That was cool. I don't think I've seen that yet in a film, and I feel like there's going to be more of that to come probably.
It was also a huge critique of the film.
Like commentary?
Yeah, like, well, first of all, we see Bob being like this wise sort of like
the tyranny of the dollar.
Nomads, the tyranny of the dollar. He talks about, like society, you have to live this certain way. It crushes you, these big companies and whatnot. And then they show her happily working at Amazon, which Amazon has been criticized a lot for their seasonal hiring practices, which forces people out once they're done, like Fern. But also their working conditions, which seemed, great for Fern. Like, they were happy and laughing, and a lot of people are critiquing the film because they think that's very inaccurate. They pretty much, there have been some people saying like this was a nice little advertisement for Amazon. And I was like, wow, that's tough.
Well, they definitely couldn't have used Amazon without like Amazon. I'm assuming Amazon had to sign off on it. And they had to have put it in like at least a decent light. I don't know.
I know, but it's like, I think a big part of this is like, what I found interesting was that this is a group of society that I didn't know really anything about. It's people, older people.
Yeah, that's a big thing too.
Lost their jobs or been forced out of work during mainly the 2008 crisis, that have now kind of become nomads, live temporary lives. And the whole point of it was like, look at these people that society rejects. Our elders, like the people we respect the most, are having to live out of a van because of big companies like Amazon. And then we see her happily working at Amazon.
Yeah.
So I think there's a sort of contradiction there that I wish they maybe talked about a little bit more.
Yeah, I think because when she's driving one time, there's on the radio, they're talking about like bears being imprisoned. And it got me thinking about, I think there is like some commentary on being stuck in that kind of cycle, even though like the Nomads is its own kind of cycle, like you said, but like Amazon does the same thing, that if you're locked into that job and it's the same thing over and over again. I don't know if I came away with this like pro or anti Amazon. It didn't, you're right though, it didn't look like terrible, but they also kick her out too, so
yeah, but it's seasonal. Like I said, like we start and end at Amazon.
it's fire.
As if to say, like, Amazon is like, hey, come on back for 2 or 3 months, and then you got to hit the road. Like, we won't help you at all.
Are they like,
Now,
do they only
that
need
makes
so many
sense.
people? Like,
I don't know, man.
Jeff Bezos, get back to us on how you run your company, please, sir.
let us know. Yeah. So, let's see. Another film that I compared this to, which we've already covered, is Sound of Metal.
Not again, bro. God.
Drink some water.
I do, that's the thing.
Okay. So, I didn't think I would end up comparing this to Sound of Metal, but the more I thought about it, the more I found it applicable. In that both films try to portray and give some sort of insight into a certain section of society or group of people that in some way are isolated from like lack representation in media and Hollywood. Sound of Metal was people that are hard of hearing and deaf, and then this film was elderly nomads that have been affected by the 2008 housing crisis who don't receive any help. So I think that in a lot of ways, like the cinema verite, that was kind of the style for both of these.
Whoa.
Big term there for all
Whoa.
you film buffs. Cinema verite of
Huzzah.
French origin. I think that style is very fitting and very appropriate to both stories. It's sort
Sure.
of like, it's rough, it's unpolished, it's just sort of, I don't know, it's simplistic in some ways, but also more realistic than typical Hollywood films, which I really like and I really love about both films. But ultimately, it's the story of Ruben in Sound of Metal, the man who goes deaf, that is so much more engaging to me and interesting than Fern in Nomadland.
Yeah.
And it's, to me, it's the pacing, it's the editing. But ultimately, I think you had two pretty similar characters. So then it's asking the question of why did I care about Ruben so much, but I couldn't bring myself to truly care about what happened to Fern.
I can take a stab at that, Steven.
Go for it, brother.
I think it's because Ruben has a goal. Like, he wants the hearing implants. He wants to get back to rocking and rolling with his gal. And Fern doesn't have a want necessarily. Like, maybe she wants, the whole idea of moving on and dealing with grief is a little more kind of like vague. There's not like a concrete want. Maybe it's like permanent work. I don't know. But they don't establish that. So she's not really like, you're not rooting for her to do anything necessarily over like the whole course of the movie. Whereas Ruben, you're at least either rooting for him to like figure it out or get that money, be able to hear again, get back with his girlfriend. I think could be part of it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean,
and both films too have like their protagonist is kind of like being initiated into the group, which I think is a good way to like introduce the audience to that group. It's just different in that like Ruben, I guess both like kind of suddenly join it, but Ruben is more of like it's more, I guess, desperate and like he has has a choice, but like he kind of was thrust into that group as she has a little more leeway, I guess. I don't know. It's an interesting point though. I like comparing the two.
Yeah, I think because like what I appreciate about both of these films is that they're really beautiful little vignettes into these two characters' lives, into like what they're discovering.
Yeah.
And I think maybe you're right. Maybe it's just that Ruben's motivation in Sound of Metal is just, it's clear. Off the bat, it's clear. We know what he's going for. We're rooting for him. And again, in Nomadland, it's fleeting. It's sort of just floating from place to place and scene to scene. And there are small little conflicts, but they never truly seem to have the great impact that maybe
Right.
we hope they do on Fern. They just sort of happen, and
Right.
she's on to the next one.
Well, I thought when Dave broke her plates,
Oh, God.
I thought that was
was a
like
tough scene
the
to watch.
relationship was over.
Yeah.
And then I guess they rekindle it or whatever. But I was like, oh man, she's gonna flip, and she just like sent him away or whatever, glues him back, and it's like, I guess that's that. I don't know. Very resilient, I guess. She, I don't know. Like that would have been a perfect moment to kind of reveal a little bit about her. Like she freaks out, she tears up, she like takes it out on Dave about like her husband. All like the grief stuff comes out or something. I mean, like the plates had a backstory, and you kind of figured like something would probably happen to him.
That was a tough scene to watch.
It was a tough scene to watch. I'm not sure. Just Box
Dave.
gave out.
Right from the bottom.
How did you feel about Dave just overall? And did it change?
Well, I like him as an actor, and I liked his character.
Mm-hmm.
So here's I think
Because he's the only other actor, more or less, right?
he's, besides her sister, who
And his
was
son.
a proper actor, and his son, Dave was the other main professional actor. Everyone else was sort of non-actors.
Right.
But it's like in a typical Hollywood film, we would be rooting for Fern to go fall in love and then settle down with Dave, and then it just doesn't happen.
That's what you were rooting for?
I don't know.
I didn't know about Dave, man.
You didn't know about Dave?
He kind of seemed
I
like
thought he was
a
cool guy.
He seemed like a cool guy, but he's also kind of like, I don't know. I got a little sketched out by him.
Flipping burgers in South Dakota.
Yeah. I mean, he was like cool, but I don't think he's the guy that you like fall in love with. He just seemed like the guy that like you trade a pot holder for a can opener with, and like that's like you have like a mutual like beneficial relationship with.
Then maybe more what I was rooting for is at the end of the movie, towards the end, in the last act, Dave goes to be with his son finally and meet his new grandchild. He invites Fern to come and live. Fern pulls up. She's been on the road. She pulls up to this beautiful farmhouse.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the most idyllic. Is that a word? Idyllic?
Yeah.
Idyllic.
You got
it. That sounded weird when it came out. The most perfect situation you would think she could find herself in. It has space, you know. It's like she could. I don't know. I felt like she could build a good life for herself with Dave and with this family that is clearly so nice and loves them. And then she just leaves. She just up and leaves. I feel like for a lot of audience members, for a lot of viewers, in myself included, for some reason that was really frustrating to witness.
Yeah.
Like, I understand the appeal of van life. I've wanted to do it for a long time, but like, if you're that old, it seems like you'd be looking for a place to settle down, and that's hard for me to understand.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Like, how could you possibly love a shitty, broken van over this beautiful farmhouse with a loving family? And that's just hard to explain. Like, I think for any director, that would be hard to get across.
Yeah. I think from like a technical standpoint, but if it was like me, I don't know, maybe it's like she just had the connection to the van, she built it herself, it's like a memory of home. Maybe she feels like I do about Dave. And you're like, maybe I don't want to go out this way, I'd rather go out like Swankie on a kayak with some swallows.
Baby.
Yeah,
Swankie's a boss.
yeah, it's a weird one. I think that's kind of the core of the movie, though, in terms of like thematically. With all these like older people, is like, well, how do you want to go out?
Yeah.
Which is like, I really liked. I think it wasn't really a character. It's just like one short story where they're all around the fire, and a woman talks about like her coworker died with like his sailboat in the driveway, and she didn't want to do that. She wanted to, I guess, explore the country and everything, and not not leave the
That was a
sailboat in the
beautiful-
driveway.
Yeah, she said, I don't want to die with my sailboat in the driveway.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think, again, there's a lot to unpack here, like thematically, what it says about like grief and isolation and loneliness and like death. But like thematics can't like carry a story. Like you could do a short film about like that, but like for an hour 45 runtime, you know, you have to kind of have a laundry line to hang all these moments on that like connects it. But I think a lot of like deep stuff going on too at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, again, they had so many of these interesting non-actors talk about their lives, and I think it's cool what they did. I believe what Chloé Zhao said that they did is that they would go out and talk to all these real nomads and then listen to their stories and record them and then bring them back, and a writer or Chloé Zhao or someone would then turn them into some sort of monologue for the non-actor to perform.
Interesting.
And it's like, I mean, we talked about it being like a documentary. I almost felt like I was watching a documentary, and in a sense, Fern is sort of like the surrogate between these non-actors and their interesting stories and the audience. Like,
Right.
we're just hearing their stories through Fern. But Fern dominates the movie, so ultimately I need to care about Fern, and I don't.
Yeah.
So it almost would have been better to me if it was a series of, or just a documentary about these actual people.
Because you get the same themes across without Fern.
Yeah.
And like the same takeaways. This is gonna be an awful comparison on paper.
Oh,
But hear me out for a second.
Here we go.
Borat 2.
What the hell?
Borat 2, and we watched Eric Andre's recent like movie, if you can, like Bad Trip, which is same like Borat-ish, where it's like a storyline and then they throw in like pranks, like Eric Andre types pranks and stuff like Borat does with
Dude,
whatever.
people are not gonna believe we're cinema scholars after this.
Listen. Borat is up for awards too. So
true.
that counts. Eric Andre probably not so much, but my point is when you watch Borat 2, at least in my opinion, the like prank stuff is the good parts that you talk about, and then like the weird stuff with his daughter, they have like weird conversations in like their van or whatever. Like I have no interest in that. Same thing with Eric Andre. He like there's scenes with him and Little Ray Howery where they're like talk in the cell phone shop or whatever, and it's like I'm not here for that. I want the pranks. And I feel like Nomadland, it's the same thing where like these interesting real life nomads is kind of what stands out, and like Fern stuff is Fern stuff, but really like you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a stretch, but
You think that's a stretch?
no, I understand what you're saying.
Like you come to see Borat for the pranks and the hijinks.
Yeah.
And obviously this isn't comedic, but after viewing it, like if I was going to say
to me
look
it's
for
just like,
something,
wow.
look for like the more documentary real life stuff versus the like fictional stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, like, that's why I'm saying, like, my favorite moments were when Swankie was giving her monologue, when Bob was talking about his son.
Did Swankie actually die?
I don't know.
I feel like they would have
Rocks on
dedicated
fire.
it to her
To
specifically.
Swankie, probably.
How did you feel? I mean, we kind of touched on like cinematography and stuff, but just the way it's shot. Anything stand out? Particular shots,
Yes.
particular looks.
I really liked how this was shot, and I've been listening to a little bit, a couple interviews that the cinematographer Josh Richards did. So we keep saying it's like a documentary, and the huge part of why I feel like I just watched a documentary is because it was shot like a documentary.
Yeah.
So when Josh Richards was talking about how they shot the film, he shot it pretty much like you would, something real, something like a documentary. They used a simple 2-camera setup. For all you camera buffs out here, they used 2-camera setup with 2 RE minis, and the focal lengths on the lens never went farther than like 35 millimeters. So that's a wide angle to
Right,
limit
yeah.
yourself to. One of the cameras was constantly on a Ronin gimbal, which he was operating, which is what we saw the majority of the time, and then the other just sat on a shoulder rig, ready to go at all times. So it was shot like a true run and gun shoot, and I really appreciate that. Like, especially for, it's nominated for Best Cinematography and 6 Academy Awards. Like, to say you shot that film on a 2-camera setup, that's cool. Like, I hope more films take after that. Because we don't need, it's not polished, which I like. It's rough. It's, hey, whatever conditions we have, like when they're in Badlands and she runs away from the tour group, like they were like, we have one take at this. It's golden hour. The sun has crested over the horizon. We need this light. Like Frances McDormand, like, get it done. And they did. And I love the use of natural light in this, the simplistic setups that they have. What I really appreciated was, the cinematographer said something that I really liked in an interview. And he said that they, as in the actors never stepped into his scene, but he always stepped into theirs. So in a typical Hollywood film, you're taking an hour, 2 hours to set up a single scene, and then the actors step on the set, you say action, and they go. But they're entering your environment. Whereas in this film, they did the opposite. He had his 2 cameras. He had him, his Coke, his AC, and they stepped into these nomads' lives in a sense, and to whatever environment Fern found herself in. And I really like that. I really like how they shot it.
Yeah, I feel like that's another kind of documentary like principle, is to try and like disrupt or like not disrupt the like subjects as least as you can. I don't know how to phrase that.
One of the funny things he was saying, Josh Richards, the cinematographer, was talking about how one day he was shooting a scene with one camera and one small tube light on a C-stand.
Wow.
And it just so happened to be the day that Joel Coen came to set to visit.
That's
Joel
true.
Coen, one half of the amazing Coen brothers.
Sure.
Matthew's favorite people in the world.
Maybe.
Get over it. Anyways, I love them too. Put me in your movie. Anyways, Joel Coen is married to Frances McDormand, so came to set to visit, and it just so happened to be that day. And he was laughing about like how he was so embarrassed to have such a legendary director see him using a single light and a camera.
It's all part of it, you know. The
But I like
Coens
that.
definitely have never shot in that style, as far as I know.
They said, I was listening to, massive shout out to Team Deacon's podcast. You know I love them. And they just had Frances McDormand, but a couple weeks ago I was listening to them talk about shooting Fargo and how they did use a lot of similar techniques, not to Nomadland, but just simplistic techniques of like
Right.
a single light to bring a scene to life, or only a few lights and single camera setups.
Yeah,
So
definitely
getting
like.
off track here, but
No, that's not off track, Steven. That's right on track, I'd say.
all right.
Yeah, not stylized, very simple. Kudos to the cinematographer for sure.
Yeah.
In terms of, I had a little thing on soundtrack. I don't know what you thought about it.
You want me to say it now?
Sure. Yeah, sorry, that was like a weird. Not
I
well
really
set
like
up.
the soundtrack. That being said, I don't know how to say it. Like, sometimes it just came in and out very
Yeah.
suddenly, and I would have liked a little bit more sort of lingering on the sound to tie together some of the scenes, because I think that's one of the reasons why it felt so piecey and so spacey to me, like just scene to scene, is because the soundtrack would cut in and out, and all of a sudden we'd be in a different part of the country and
Yeah.
different sounds and different sites, and maybe a little bit more cohesion with the soundtrack.
I was thinking, this is just a personal preference, but I feel like Southwest to me isn't like a piano soundtrack. I would have liked some guitar, like same vibe, but more like
Yeah.
quiet strumming than piano. I don't know. It just like didn't fit for me as much. Because even they have like the scene where her and Dave dance, and that's more like I don't know, like country band.
That was line dancing music.
Yeah. And then they have the other guy perform, and that's more like guitar. And I get they have like some piano with Dave at the end, but I feel like,
That piece was beautiful.
Yeah, that was a cool moment.
Touching.
Very much so. Also after that, because I revisited it this afternoon to just like get the series of events straight. So they have the piano thing, and then there's the moment where like the house is empty, and Fern just like walks through it, and then leaves. And I was really confused, like what happened. Like did everyone was out? Were they asleep?
Well, I think that was the guest house.
Dead? I think she killed them all. But there were like toys and stuff around, and she like on the piano and everything.
Oh, that's
Maybe
true.
it was the guest house. I don't know. I was confused by that because at first I was like, wait a minute, did Dave die? Because she sits in like the chair he was in during Thanksgiving. And he had the medical thing that never got revisited. You remember that?
That was, I don't know the point of that, to be honest.
Because I liked, like, she took care of him. We're like, all right, maybe she's, like, forming a connection with him. And then he's like, oh, geez, maybe he's a goner. And I guess he's fine. I don't know. I guess he can afford that treatment or whatever. He got surgery. I thought they would do a whole healthcare thing. I don't know.
You know, I thought that, too. I think we're just meant to assume that his family can afford that.
His son was in a band.
Yeah, but his house is amazing.
Maybe his daughter-in-law's like freaking CEO of a tech company or something.
Maybe.
Or like, yeah, I don't know if that like money situation exactly works out.
I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine Amazon pays that much for their seasonal workers. And there were some big expenses. I mean,
right. Well, she has to borrow money.
Oh, she does. That's true.
From her sister.
Her sister and then Swankie, too.
Right. So she doesn't have any money. I don't know where Dave... I don't know. Which, again, I feel like the money trouble figures itself out, too, a little bit.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to do anything too desperate, and, like, she kind of comes to terms with her sister, even though, like, I like how her sister's married to like a real estate agent or whatever, and you have a bunch of real estate people talking about like the housing market as like a homeless person is sitting there. Even though she's not, it's weird to say homeless because it is like houseless, as she says.
Yeah.
In that sporting goods store that she was in for some reason. Yeah, I don't know, because she's not. It's not really the same as like someone that's like on a city sidewalk. Because it's like kind of by choice and kind of not.
Yeah, I think that's she's worked her whole life, and we're saying like, look at all these people who have worked their whole lives, who have fought in wars for us.
Right.
We can't even provide them with steady work and a home to live in. Like, they have to go out on the road to find work.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest problems that they try to address in the film. Yeah, I don't know. I think when we go back to the scene at her sister's, she goes to her sister's just to get money, pretty much. That's what we find out. And then she's sitting around at night after dinner, having a drink or whatever, talking with her sister's husband and some other guy. The dudes. She's talking to the guys. And the guy basically ends up saying, like, hey, listen, Fern, like, not all of us are lucky enough to just up and leave and go live in a van. I think that was a pretty subtle scene, like, pretty quick scene, but I think it was a pretty important scene. I think a lot of people think that if you're traveling the road as a nomad and living around this country and moving from place to place and seeing all these beautiful things, that sometimes it's a choice. But like we just said, like, part of the film is addressing that there are a community, not just a few, but a big community of people that have to hit the road to find work.
Right.
And so the misconception that these people are, just
freewheeling,
trailblazing, just hitting the road for their own enjoyment. I think trying to break that myth is, I think, a big part of the film and a part that I really appreciate.
Well, it's interesting too how like this guy has like a home and a family and everything, and he's like jealous of her because he can't like uproot his entire life, and like he fantasizes about it when like the reality it's like goes both ways. Like she might, even though she turns it down, like she might dream, or some nomads might dream of having like his life, and he might dream of having theirs.
Yeah, you want what you don't have.
Although that guy can probably get that sick RV with like the washer and dryer in it.
That's true.
You know, which would be kind of bad if you like drove up to the nomad community in that thing. You're like, "What's up, fellow nomads? Let's eat some canned soup."
Yeah.
You know, class commentary.
She eats soup.
That'd actually be not funny, but it would have been interesting if she parked at like a RV park where like families are taking vacations and stuff, and it just was like they're like simulating what her entire life is like for like a week, but at the end of it they get to go back to their homes and like she's in a van forever kind of deal. Maybe for Nomadland 2. Knowing how Hollywood likes their sequels. God.
Yeah, right.
One shot I wanted to mention too, there's one where she's like sitting alone behind like a pile of beets. I really like that one.
Yes.
I'm not sure what the context is of it, or why she would do that, but I thought it was kind of an interesting portrait of like American, like big agra, if that's how they call it. Big agriculture,
Not
and
big
just the
pharma,
pile of
big agra.
beets, big farm, you know? Not big
Yeah.
pharma. That was a cool one.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't have too many shots, like just particular shots that stood out to me.
No, I didn't either. I had to like look for one, but I think that's
Yeah.
just part of like doing the naturalistic thing. Because you're not gonna have a bunch of stylized like, whoa, dude, look how they did that like crane shot swooping in on the van or whatever. You know. So you're not gonna have a ton of that. Do you have any good lines? Moments.
I didn't write down any in particular, but again, Bob's speech about his son.
Yeah,
The
and no
line-
final goodbyes.
There's no final goodbyes. I always just say, I'll see you down the road. I mean, I really love that one.
That's gonna be a tough segue into the one I was gonna say.
Oh, Jesus. What is it?
Because there's that point where they're like her and Dave work at the something drug. What was it?
Wall drug?
Wall drug.
Yeah.
And they go to the zoo or whatever.
Yeah.
And she goes like, sheesh, when the like snakes on her, and then when they're watching the gator getting fed, she does this like, oh. It reminded me of the grape lady who fell while smashing grapes on the local news.
Best videos of all time. The best news blooper of all time.
She gave me a little vibes from that woman, so I appreciated that. I'm sure that's what they were going for.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. Like, the director talked a little bit about how the way Frances McDormand portrayed Fern was very almost like childlike in a lot of senses. Like when you see her running through Badlands, like she runs away from the group, and she's like kind of just like, I don't know. The way she moves her body, the way she like waved to people was very childlike. She would wear like, you know, her outfit was like tennis shoes with like pink socks and like.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was childlike or like I felt like if you spend enough time alone, eventually your sort of social, the social tics that you've built up sort of like start to fall away and you become a little bit more loose, I guess. I don't know. And I felt like that's what was happening to Fern throughout the movie. Like she started, you know, we witnessed a full year in her life as a nomad. A lot of it was spent alone. Sometimes she had people to talk to. Sometimes she didn't.
That's funny. I thought too, like there would be more of like a message of like community and like to kind of, you know, like commiserate in grief with others is like the best way to get over or move on or talk about it. And then it keeps going back to the point where she leaves Dave's house and like continues kind of the isolation, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like it was going like that. And you know, she's with like Linda May, who we haven't really mentioned at all. I liked Linda May. She was a cool.
She was nice.
I thought she was going to be like the Paul Raci of this movie.
Yeah,
but
was not.
She comes in and out. But you know, they're like working together, and it reminds me of like, you know, when you work with your friends and stuff, and you like do silly stuff. Well,
we did some silly stuff, Matthew.
I tell you what, Steven.
That conference center didn't know what hit him. The good old days.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, you know, she would realize.
The summers of our youth.
Yeah. Might still end up working there. Who knows? It's not out of the cards yet. Me and Linda May hosting the old RV camps. But yeah, I thought it would kind of be like, oh, like I have a friend in Linda May. This is cool. I should make friends. I should be a part of this community. It didn't exactly go in that direction. It ends with her being alone back in Empire.
And they also end with match cuts from the beginning. When she was first in Empire, she had Linda May. She was doing her laundry. She was doing a puzzle. What was the other one they showed?
Well, she's at like the storage unit.
She's at the storage unit. And in the beginning of the film, we saw her doing that all with Linda May. At the end, she's doing her laundry and she's finishing that puzzle alone.
Brutal.
So I think that's interesting, but yeah, again, it's just kind of, I don't know.
It's like cynical almost. I don't know. Not cynical.
I don't think so. I think it's just like, there's no major arc besides she learns to live alone. And is okay with that. And to me, I don't know, it was just sort of...
She never seemed not okay with it, though.
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of people that would not, like, shit in a bucket and be like, I'm going to keep doing this. You know, like,
She was offered help so many times. And I understand there's a sort of independence that comes with being a nomad, and the idea of, you know, a charity. You know, when that lady at the gas station approached her and said there's a church down the road that you can go to and they'll help you, I understand there's a difference between that sort of charity and Dave saying, hey, you can come live with us, or your sister saying, hey, come stay with us.
Or the woman at the sporting goods store.
Oh, yeah.
Which was interesting. And also, like...
a mosquito net.
Oh, yeah.
In the middle of winter.
Ding. CinemaSin.
Yeah. 2 out of 10.
A lot of CinemaSins. No, they definitely won't do one on this one. But that scene we see, like, she was a substitute teacher, and, like, we get a little Shakespeare. I don't know, which at this point, like, it was a cool moment with her and Derek, who we haven't talked about yet.
Oh, yeah. She
recites the Shakespeare quote, and they kind of have, like, the montage of her going through her memories and stuff, and I thought it was cool. I liked it a lot. I think Shakespeare... It almost seems, like, cheap to use Shakespeare at this point. I don't know. I feel like I would rather be, like, surprised... Oh, Jesus Christ. Cut.
No, keep that.
I would rather be surprised by, like, a random poem, and I'm like, wow, that's really good. That's cool. Than being like, oh, it's Shakespeare. I'm familiar with this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think was it Romeo and Juliet? I forget what the... Was it How Foul and Fair a Day I've Not Seen or something like that?
Oh, Jesus, not that. I don't know. I'm blanking on it.
Can I compare thee to a summer's day? I think it's that, actually.
Yeah, I think it would have been better to have...
Yeah, it was that, I think. Find something else.
You just cut out there.
Sorry. Hello?
Oh, you're back.
Hello?
You're good.
Yeah, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Oh, it's just a sonnet, I think. I don't know if that's actually in anything. Yeah, I don't know. Why not just quote, like, Hourglass by Catfish and the Bottlemen, you know?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Great song.
Like Derek just, like, writes, like, a sick rock song, acoustic, and send that to your girlfriend in Wisconsin or whatever. Actually, he wasn't from Wisconsin. I forget where his girlfriend was from. Some farm.
You know, it was interesting. In the book, apparently that character was a young pregnant girl. And so they went out to try and find a nomad who was young and pregnant to tell her story. And as they were doing that, they were talking to Derek, and they were like, wow, this guy has a great story. And Chloé Zhao was like, well, he's in the film instead of this girl, so
Oof.
got the cut. You and your baby, get out of here.
Sheesh.
Hit
The
the
pregnant
road.
thing would be interesting because I feel like when Fern's at Dave's, she doesn't know how to handle the baby, and it would have been interesting to do a little like motherhood thing. Because I'm assuming a lot of nomads have children, and it's got to be weird for them to see their parents like on the road. Because I think a lot of people live with their parents, and these obviously are ones that don't, and probably have strained relationship with their kids, like Dave does, but then doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was thinking that last night after I watched it. I was like, I'm sort of more interested in what Dave's story is than what Fern's is.
Oof.
Like, what does it take for a father to leave his family,
Right.
even if the son's all grown up? Like, you know, a lot of older adults want to live near their kids so they can experience that and experience the grandchildren. And for a long time, Dave was away from his family. To me, that was a more interesting story in some ways.
Yeah, I think it would have been better to give Fern someone like a kid, maybe. You know?
Yeah.
Like maybe she leaves and then like through her journey learns family's important or something. I mean, that's really cheesy just like on the surface, but like in practice.
Well, yeah, but in some way it's also like I don't know. We see Fern visit her sister who clearly loves her and cares about her and wants to help her, and even living with her sister, she can't do that. Fern can't make that work. Like, she couldn't sleep in that room.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be weird.
I think it's interesting. It's not, you know, we didn't get a very good reason. We don't know their backstory at all. We don't have much of an emotional monologue that Fern gives or the sister gives.
Right. Well, she's...
And I think, to me, that's the moment where I'm really like, okay, Fern is a true nomad. Like, even at home with her family, she doesn't feel at home.
She's just destined for the van.
Destined for the open road.
Married to the open road.
Married to the open road.
It's like the sailors
Life is
in...
a highway.
Yeah, exactly. Where was the Rascal Flatts cover of that? Yeah, and I think that's the moment when we find out Fern, she married her husband really young, quickly, moved to Empire, Nevada, and like got married, and it seemed like I don't know, like impulsive, or like, I'm not really sure what they're trying to say by like saying she did that, because it didn't turn out poorly. I mean, it kind of sucked that her husband died, but...
Yeah, but the real catalyst is, what was the mine or the factory that
like the
down in the
sheetrock
town
mine or
of
something.
Empire? The sheetrock, yeah.
Right.
Like, that's the real catalyst, because that causes the whole town to fail.
Yeah, it's almost like, I think if you started the story earlier, maybe her and her husband, you open with them, like 5-10 minutes in, the town gets shut down, and then it's like, what do? We have to get out of here by like X amount of days. Maybe her husband dies like halfway through. I don't know. There's a different way to go about that, maybe. But that would obviously be like less road trip type.
It's a truly movie about being on the road.
Even though like the last half hour aren't on the road.
Yeah.
If you do it, that stops in her house and the Dave's house. But I will say even though like we've not like slandered Frances McDormand, but like just not obviously her, like she does a great performance. I know she I read that she like actually lived in a van for a while and obviously brought a lot to the role and everything. The scene where she's at like the mechanics and they tell her like basically it's gonna take like $2,300 to fix your van and your van's like $5,000 or whatever, and she basically says like, listen, your catalytic converter
Shot. And you're fucked, buddy. Get out of here.
Well, Steve, you'll have to give the same monologue about how that car is your life and house. Because I thought that was really powerful. Like, that would be a very difficult thing to kind of like navigate, and being like, no, I can't just sell this. Like, I need a place to live. So
yeah,
I'm going to have to figure this out. Which probably should have been a more lasting problem, but it didn't really stick.
It was solved real quick.
Yeah, that's one of the major symptoms of this story. Just another example of it. This is what I'm saying, Steve, when I'm a little biased, obviously, being more on the writing side of stuff, but I think the script and like the story have to be really like nailed down, because like no matter how good your cinematography is and like your cool monologues and stories and like landscapes and moments, like if the writing's not there, then there's really nothing like directors, actors, cinematographers can like do to like elevate it as much. That's as like fair. It's like can only go so high.
Of like, if the movie looks good, I can get away with it, but sometimes that works. Sometimes I think the movie is just beautifully shot, and the soundtrack and the sound design is great, and the editing is on point. This movie, it was shot beautifully, I felt. I think the sound was done well, but you're right. I think the writing just lacked. It had beautiful moments.
Well, it's like not written, really. Yeah,
I guess the improvisational sort of side of this movie, which there was heavily leaned on improv, I think it took away from it. I think it could have used more concrete writing.
I would be curious what the script looked like for this, if there was one.
I don't know. Just Fern shits in bucket aggressively.
Do you think she actually did that?
Yeah, she actually had to shit in the bucket.
Man, imagine the sound guy. She's so dedicated that she took 6 laxatives before that scene and ate a bunch of beans.
Oh, that'll do it.
Cracked a vent and everything, man. Golly. All right, well, here's a question for you.
Okay, hit me.
Potentially wrap this up. Is like, does this sell you? Would you be able to live the nomad life?
Oof, Mackie, that's a
the
good
Fern nomad life, not the romanticized. Yeah. Well, maybe you could. I don't know. I mean, it's probably would be more enjoyable if you had like something like a net to catch you at the end of the day, and like
but I
home.
also think there are parts of it, because we see moments where Fern is truly happy.
Yeah.
It's tough, because being someone that has always been interested in that and the sort of nomadic lifestyle, and even the little time that I have spent on long drives alone, there's a freedom that comes with it that is really intoxicating and makes you want to do it. But then when you hit your low points, when you're alone on the road, like, it's low. You feel so alone. You feel so far away from your friends and your family. But it's so different, because, again, this is an older person. Like, she's in her 60s or something, I think.
Something like that.
And she's trying to survive, whereas a lot of these nomads nowadays, younger nomads, I should say, obviously with plenty of exceptions, but a lot of them are, they build out this van, they have all the amenities that you could have in a van, and they hit the road and they stay in all these beautiful spots with the knowledge, I think, a lot of the times, that you can go back to a certain town or place and find a job and continue on with your life. Whereas the life that Fern and these other elderly nomads are living is not temporary in so many ways, for so many of them. It's not...
it's not a vacation.
Ephemeral? Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, ephemeral. Fleeting,
Fleeting.
Short term.
It's not a vacation. It's their life. And I do really love the scene towards the beginning where they're sitting around a campfire and they're giving different reasons for being nomads, because this sort of lifestyle draws so many different people. And so I think, like, the one guy who was talking about, well, I'm a nomad because the only time, I have bad PTSD, and the only time I can find peace and deal with my PTSD is out in these quiet places like the desert. some other girl, family members passed away, and she wanted to hit the road and see this country. And then obviously the lady whose coworker died, and she realized that she didn't want to die in a cubicle.
Yeah.
I do love that about this film and about that lifestyle, is it draws so many people with so many stories to tell. And at the end of the day, the story didn't do a good enough job for me at telling those individual stories.
Yeah, you could almost pick one of them and expand it into a movie.
Yeah. Matthew.
Steven.
Do you think you could live that? Hashtag van life.
I think I would probably trend more towards hashtag van life than hashtag fern van life.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be really tough. I think, it's a privilege to not have to do that or even like consider that seriously as like a way to get by. I do think it would be really cool to drive cross country. I've never really gotten the chance to see like, big sky country would be really cool. I think just like shitting in a bucket and baked beans would wear on you, even as much as a baked beans fan as I am.
And for our audience members at home, you'll never find a bigger baked beans fan than Matthew. This man loves his beans.
Yeah, I think, there's pros and cons, and I think long term, I think just in general, it's human nature to kind of get sick of being in one place for too long,
You're telling me.
So I think it's an extreme example of always on the move, as opposed to kind of being static. It's very,
Yeah, I mean, like I said in the beginning, I think it's a cool film for people to watch just to show some of the realities of living in a van and being a nomad.
Yeah.
Because so many people have this misconception of like van life is fresh brewed coffee in the morning overlooking the Grand Canyon, Instagramming with your fucking, leather hat on or whatever that shit that people wear and all this bullshit. Not a leather hat. What is it? I can't think of what it is. All these van life people wear this like one particular hat.
What, like
It's not a cowboy hat, but it's like a cowboy hat.
And it's leather?
No, it's not leather.
Oh.
It's like, I don't know.
Felt?
Yeah, felt. All these fuckers with their felt
or
caps
just like a leather baseball cap. That would be hot as hell.
A romantic feeling around van life that just isn't the case.
Mm-hmm.
And with social media and Instagram in particular, van life seems like the most romantic thing you can do. You always have, these like two hot people living in a van traveling the country.
Mm.
And it's just like, dude, that's not the reality for a lot of people. And guess what? There's a whole sect of van life people who are doing it out of necessity, not out of fun, not out of the need to just like go seek fun.
And do they wear leather hats or post on Instagram?
Not that I don't think Fern has an Instagram.
That's a hot take.
That's a hot take.
You got anything else before we get to the Cinema Scholar scale?
Fuck, I'm just mad I can't describe that hat now.
Can we get hey Jamie, can you pull up the leather hat thing?
I'm gonna look up influencer hat and see what comes up. Influencer.
Perfect.
Oh look, it's the first thing.
Oh wow.
Oh, what do they call it? Man, it's like a wool fedora. Matt, just look up influencer hat. You know what I mean.
Fedora.
We'll put this on our Patreon for all the folks. Patreon,
get
guys.
$6 influencer hat. Get Swankie. Oh, that's influential hat. Sorry, I can't talk and type at the same time.
I literally, I can't find anything. Well, wool fedora, I guess.
It's like the tan one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. It's almost like a park ranger, but like shorter brim. I don't know.
Okay, so all these people wearing their park ranger hats, travel in the country in their Mercedes Sprinter van. Get the hell out of here. Watch Nomadland.
And add to cart. All right, Steve. Sounds like I've got two of them. I'm gonna pick you up in Colorado. We're gonna hit the
Let's do
open
it.
road. We
Hit
can
the
share
road,
a
go make
5-gallon bucket.
Oh shit.
You feel me, dog? Do you think we need bigger than 5 gallon?
Oh yeah. It's bulking season.
Hold on. You don't need. That seems excessive. Do they empty? Well.
Yeah, they empty it.
Well, I know, but right after, right? Like you don't need. It doesn't add up.
Well, they were saying the 7-inch. Jesus.
That would be a short one.
What is it? What is the unit of measurement?
Gallon.
The 7-gallon bucket was for people with bad knees because they don't have to bend down so far.
It's crazy she did that in the van, bro. I mean, I guess you couldn't do it outside with people around, but inside, that's tough.
That's van life, man.
I guess if you're alone, you probably just do it in the field.
That's what these people in their park ranger hats don't show you, is them shitting in a bucket.
That's true. They probably don't even do that. Just
not.
rest stop.
Well, rest stop, and then some of them have toilets in the vans.
Porta potty.
Porta johns.
They could invest in one of those for those like RV camps. I don't know if that goes against their like philosophy or not.
Yes.
So
They can't be giving money to big toilet companies.
I'm a big proponent of trying to normalize like porta potties everywhere. You know, how many times? Here's a little plug for you. I don't know what the company's name is. Is it Porter John? Is that the name of the company?
I don't know. That's my favorite.
You ever
person.
been in a public place and had nature call? And what are you going to do? You can't go into a Panera Bread and have to ask for the code and not buy anything. Or you buy something you're not going to eat. No one likes Panera Bread. It's just hospital food that's overpriced.
Get the hell out of here. I love Panera Bread.
Do you? I actually like Panera Bread. I was trying to just make it a little more zingy for the copy for porterjohn.com.
Your Porta John company just lost all of its Panera Bread listeners. Eaters. Shit. This is going down real fast.
I think this is the best part. But in summation, get some Porter Johns out there, man. All the fields in the middle of cities, parks.
President Biden, we demand more Porta John legislation.
And take care of our elders on the road. It's kind of a part 1 and 2 policy change.
Yeah.
All right, Steve. Where does this land for you on the Cinema Scholar scale?
Okay.
This is a tough one, I think.
My final thoughts on this.
And do you see it winning any Oscars? I think it should be part 2 of that question.
Okay. So my final thoughts. Again, it was like watching a documentary. I can't shake it. Maybe I need to watch it a second time. This is one of the films that I haven't watched 2 times before doing a podcast. Maybe I need to watch it a second time. I probably won't, because it's rooted in so much realism that I appreciate, and the use of non-actors. Some of the times it worked. A lot of the times it didn't for me, because they're just not as good as real actors. I think Bob's monologue and Swankie's monologue were really good. Like, that was just as engaging as listening to a real actor. But I appreciate this film as a sort of experimental piece. At the end of the day, though, it does not have the rewatchability that I would want from a movie. So
you're gonna have a listener say, bro, me and my friends have rewatched Nomadland like 8 times already. Which isn't as like unsettling as saying Joker, but
yeah.
If that person comes back for us, even though they were mad at me for saying that, I hope you're listening to this. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so it doesn't have the rewatchability. In terms of Oscar nominations, I don't think I'm fine with it being nominated for Best Picture, because I think it's interesting to see a picture like this, like an experimental movie that's a 2-camera shoot with minimal equipment, traveling with a small crew. There's only 24, 25 people in the actual crew, so that's a very small film crew. I think I can appreciate that it's nominated. I think more movies like this need to start being nominated. I don't think it'll win.
Do you think, is that the same as saying you don't think it should win?
I don't think it should win.
Do you think it will win?
No.
It's got like critical reviews is like through the roof.
I know, and I don't know, man. I don't understand it, to be honest.
Yeah, it is a
like
weird
I said,
one.
like I wanted to love this so much more than I actually did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say because I haven't seen the other, besides Sound of Metal and Trial of Chicago 7, I haven't seen the other nominate. But I would rather have Sound of Metal. I think Sound of Metal would deserve winning way more than Nomadland.
I agree.
And you can take that to the bank.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, my score on the Cinema Scholars scale is... I never think about
No, I don't either. I don't either.
I gotta give this a... Oh, man. A 5.5 out of 10. Right, just over half.
It's like impossible to score, you know?
It's a hard one to... Yeah, I don't know. What is it? All right, Matthew, what are your final thoughts? What are your thoughts about this movie going into awards season, and what do you give it?
I can pretty much just echo everything you said. I don't think I have anything original to bring to the table in that regard.
What Steven said.
I could just rephrase everything you said, add a little pad the runtime on this.
That's what our viewers want.
That's what they want. It's just another guy saying the exact same thing. No, I agree pretty much. I thought there would be a little more pushback from you on this because I think just the subject matter is so much up your alley. So I'm just really disappointed in you is what I'm trying to say.
You thought I wouldn't like it as much as I did?
No, I thought you'd like it more than you did.
Dude, that's why I say I wanted to like this so bad. I saw the trailer. It was coming out the day that I was supposed to leave my cousin's house and I didn't have anywhere to go, or the night before that, and I was like, I am going to watch this movie and then hit the open road and be so motivated. I would have been depressed if I watched this and then tried to drive around the Southwest for a month.
No, not a advertisement for that. Yeah, I was also... I mean, I didn't really go into it with any expectations. I figured... I don't know, with all the critical thing, I thought Frances McDormand would be like, you know, one of the, like, powerhouse performance or whatever.
It wasn't at all, though.
It was not.
I mean,
she's fine. I mean, I think she's done in bigger and better roles.
But I just don't.
So, yeah, I was thinking like, I can't, like, if you go 5, it's like, yeah, it's an average film, which I don't think does it justice, because I agree with you, it is cool to experiment. It's a cool subject matter. I like how it kind of sheds light on a kind of, you know, disadvantaged group of people, highlights their stories. A very, you know, very cool, just like, it's kind of like everything outside the actual film is cool. Like, making it, the whole process, but, like, just as, like, from minute 1 to minute whatever, hour 45, doesn't bring it. So I'll say 5.75.
Oh, up in the ante.
That's funny because it's still a failing grade if you convert it, but don't let that, you know.
Well, I wouldn't say this movie's a failure. Again, like, I think there are reasons to watch this movie. There are valid reasons to be like, hey, to recommend this to someone. That being said, this is the type of film that, like, if we told a certain friend of ours who shall remain nameless, let's just say he lives in Cambridge, if we showed him this film, he would come back and say, I stopped watching 10 minutes in, that movie fucking sucked.
Yeah, he would fall asleep.
He would fall asleep immediately.
Yeah.
So like, maybe this is a film really for, like, if you really like movies and you really want to give it a go, just watch Marvel movies and Smurfs, then this might not be the film for you.
Free on Hulu.
It is free on Hulu. That's an interesting
free
thing.
To stream. Yeah. And I will say, like, another thing that's cool outside of this is to have an Asian female director. And I think, you know, there's all the politics involved with that, but that is a cool thing to have, you know, a female director and a female producer and star in Frances McDormand, you know, receive recognition. And I think this kind of, like, borders on whether... It's hard to say whether this is like, oh yeah, this is a total, like, Oscar bait type movie, or if it's, like, definitely not the kind of movie that, you would expect at the Oscars because it's so small in scope.
Yeah.
But it also has that like indie kind of thing, and it is Fox Searchlight, which isn't like your tiny, like distributor and studio.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when I found out it was Fox Searchlight.
Yeah. Well, I think just Frances McDormand being who she is and as a producer and everything can kind of elevate it.
Yeah, she's got sway in the biz.
Yeah.
Showbiz. I don't think this is Oscar bait at all.
Okay.
I didn't feel like that at all. There were no scenes that went over the top. Their use of non-actors is something I never thought, an Oscar-nominated Best Picture would have so much of.
I think it's just Frances McDormand.
I guess, and I don't. Her performance was good. It was solid. She was convincing as a nomad, but it wasn't like, wow, look at this.
How do you compare it? Because like you could say the same thing for Paul Raci, but like.
But I love Paul Raci.
I know. I just don't think Fern had the same like nuance as Joe.
And I think Joe did more in Sound of Metal with the scenes he had than Fern did with the whole movie that she had.
Whew.
And
really just casting aspersions on Frances.
I like her though.
Yeah.
She's great in Fargo. That's all I could think of was her asking, or her husband asking about eggs.
Oh, Norm.
Oh, Norm. No, honey, I'm going to make you some eggs.
Good night, Norm.
Good night, Norm. Oh, God. I love that movie, though.
I'm sure she would appreciate us only talking about the movie she made in 1999 or whatever. I think, Academy darling Frances McDormand. Whatever.
Yeah.
We liked it though, kind of.
Oh, we should mention it won Best Picture in Drama at the Golden Globes and Best Director.
Yeah, it's got the momentum, man. That's what I'm saying. And it won at Venice when it came out.
It has more respect critically than we've both given it.
Whew, by like a lot, dude.
By quite a bit.
It's like 96 Metascore. And we gave it an average of like 5.6 something.
We watch a lot of movies with casual moviegoers, shall we say. And I can't imagine any of them liking this movie.
I know, we're talking critics though.
I know, but when you think about like they put this on Hulu, like, how many casual moviegoers that have Hulu are going to watch this and be like, wow.
I know, but that doesn't mean...
This is Best Picture worthy.
Because the critics are going to watch it.
Well, the critics can...
And that's who that's the awards.
Eat cheese.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so like the IMDb... All right, 93 Metascore. Sorry, I said 96. I'm going to say it dropped since I last saw it, but that's probably not true. And then the user score 7.6. Okay. So, that's more like just your average Joe people who write movie reviews on IMDb for like no reason. So that's a decent disparity. I don't think people like hate it, but that's 42,000 people.
Yeah. Dude, like we talked about this when we did our episode on Sound of Metal and like when we were giving it scores. And I initially had said like, listen, I just don't know the rewatchability on this. Like if I could truly go back and rewatch it. And then I watched it again and like it lingered with me for a while.
Yeah. This one didn't stick.
This one did not stick. And I watched it last night. And I thought about it all this morning and listened to interviews and listened to Frances McDormand talk and the director and the cinematographer. And I did the same thing with Sound of Metal, but Sound of Metal I still think is a great movie and it still lingers with me.
Yeah.
And this one just doesn't have that stick.
Maybe because we're young.
We're young. We don't understand what it's like to be a 76-year-old nomad.
Our parents will. Our parents will do another podcast and they watch it. But no, I feel like that's a problem. I mean, that's probably not why, but if like you should be able to relate to the protagonists regardless of their like demographics. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's that.
That's that, folks.
That's Nomadland.
This has been Nomadland.
That's tough. This is the one that we lowest score so far.
I know, and I was so excited to watch it.